FM 89 WONC Naperville, Chicago. You're tuned into the Yardbird Suite every Sunday afternoon, 3 to 6, and I am honored and privileged to have with me in the studio Mr. Quentin Coaxum.
What's going on, everybody?
Quentin, it's so nice to have you here in the studio. I've had your album, Current, which we'll talk about later, for well over a year now, so it'll be nice to finally get the behind the scenes there. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? You're from St. Louis?
Yeah, I grew up in a suburb just outside of St. Louis, maybe about 10 to 20 minutes, depending on which direction you're going. Outside of St. Louis, a suburb called St. Charles. I had a lot of family on the Illinois side of St. Louis and East St. Louis. So I spent most of my life growing up there, and I started getting into music. I got into music. I grew up in a pretty musical household. Not that my parents were musicians, but I grew up hearing a lot of great music. Like my parents' records, I was really lucky. The stuff that they played when I was growing up, like I heard a lot of Isley Brothers and some Miles Davis and some John Coltrane, some Jackson 5 and OJ's and Al Green and Tom Scott and Grover Washington and grew up at church a lot. So I kind of had heard a lot of music that was either influenced by or influenced jazz, and it kind of was good for me to kind of grow up saturated in those styles of music. So I grew up in St. Louis. I started playing the trumpet just before middle school, and I just kind of was good at it, and I wasn't really serious about it. I was into like sports, and I was into drawing a lot. But halfway through my high school career, I got really into music, and that's kind of when I got serious about it.
Well, like any good musician, it sounds like you've been attracted to all sounds of the music spectrum. It's interesting because you mentioned a lot of artists that would later influence R&B.
Yeah, I think I like a lot of different styles of music, and even though jazz just happens to be the music I feel that I can express myself the most in, and I'm going to be a student of the music forever, and it's I'm never going to stop learning about the jazz tradition and from the jazz tradition, but it doesn't take away from the fact for me that I love so many other styles of music and want to have those sensibilities in my music if it feels right. So I guess when I started writing music, I never really felt like, okay, I've got to sit down and write a jazz song. I just try to write something that I want to hear, and whatever it sounds like when it's done is, if I like it, then it's a success. So
how'd the R&B kid from St. Louis come all the way here to Chicago to play jazz?
I went to Northern Illinois University for my undergraduate. I studied with the great Professor Ronald Carter, and I was there with a lot of at a time when there were a lot of great musicians there. I was roommates with a great piano player named Stu Mindeman, a trumpet player named Marquise Hill. That's where I met a good friend of mine, Christopher McBride, who I would later play and record with, a piano player named Willem Dellisfort, and there's a whole bunch of others
that would later join, I think, the same label.
Yeah, yeah. And
just to be clear, you're roommates with Stu and Marquise? Or?
Yeah, we were
Wow.
Our junior year. We were, and there was a couple other people too. A great trumpet player named Ryan Neither, who's I think based out of Minnesota right now. We all lived together, and that was an interesting year.
That's awesome.
But yeah, we were all there together, and you know, I wasn't sure if I was going to go back to St. Louis after my career at Northern, or if I was going to go to Chicago or stay in Chicago. But the music scene seemed so vibrant, and it was such an inspirational place to be. A couple things fell into place for me, and I was able to stay. And I just try to play as much as I can, go out as much as I can, see music as much as I can, and develop relationships. And I've been blessed for it to kind of work out for me to stay here and still be playing around town. So I'm happy to stay here because I think this is one of the greatest music scenes the country has to offer right now.
Absolutely. There was another musician who I was talking to earlier. The name escapes me, but they said that Chicago was such a fantastic, fortunate fly trap where once you get in there, you just can't leave because the music is so strong.
Yeah, and Chicago's got its own. I mean, I got friends that are in New York and musician friends that are in Los Angeles, and they all say that every scene, has its own thing, but Chicago's. The quality musicianship in Chicago you can put up against any place in the world. So it's a great place to be a musician and learning and be pushed and get better.
In fact, you're still in school right now, right?
Yeah, so I did my undergrad at Northern Illinois University, and now I'm doing my master's at Northwestern University, studying with the great Victor Goines of Jazz at Lincoln Center, and there's a lot of great musicians there right now, and it's I'm just trying to I got an opportunity to go, and I wanted to put myself in a position to be able to continue to learn and not waste the opportunity.
Now, being in school, I can imagine that will kind of hinder certain opportunities to get gigs and concerts.
I'm pretty busy with school, but I still get out and play.
Oh, absolutely. That's part of the whole educational process.
Right,
I'm sure.
right.
But you got a current residency at Andy's right until the end of summer here.
Oh, yeah. So I'm part of what's called the Trumpet Summit. And we're going to be at Andy's Jazz Club every Monday from now and actually through till December.
Through December?
Through December, yeah.
Awesome.
And it's run by a great Chicago trumpeter, Marcus Carroll.
Yes.
And it regularly features him on trumpet, me on trumpet, and another great trumpeter named Justin Copeland. And the rhythm section is the great Marcin Fami on piano, Andrew Vogt on bass, and Isaiah Spencer on drums. And every week we're there playing music of great trumpeters and also playing some of our own original music. So it's been great so far. We've had good turnouts. It's been fun. So if you're looking for some great music or something to do, come downtown, the River North area in Chicago, and come check us out at Andy's every Monday from 9 p.m. to 1 a.m.
And hopefully there'll be an ongoing residency, year after year, because I know you guys took the spot of the Chicago Jazz Orchestra.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also, I think the Trumpet Summit was there before a couple years ago with maybe a different configuration, but for right now, it's going well, and we're going to be there through December, so we'd love to see you out.
Yeah, I went a couple weeks ago, and it was a really cool, interesting combination of 3 trumpets on the front lines. And in the crowd, too, how much support you can get from musicians who stop by to listen in. I always talk about how if you go to jazz shows consistently, like even just once a week, you'll find one player either in the crowd or in the bandstand. Like, oh, here's Marcin Fami with Xavier Breaker, who's also got Rajiv Halim, who's also with so and so and so on.
Yeah.
And it's just really cool to see it connected.
There's definitely a lot of different networks. And, if you stay out and you go check out music, you're going to find out just how connected a lot of the musicians are.
Yeah. And clearly, just from the player list on your album here, current out now with the Skiptone label, clearly you have those connections because you got a smattering of awesome players. Stu Minderman, of course, I was going to ask you about him, but a roommate for a few years. That clearly explains why you have him on so many tactile instruments.
I'm actually on his record too. He has a great record called "In Your Waking Eyes," featuring the poems of Langston Hughes. So that's a good one for people to check out as well.
Yeah. But when I first started listening to your album here, the first word that went through my mind, especially when I got to like Brown Bear, going through it chronologically, I was like, this is really fresh. That's like, I try not to use that word often, but there it is, because it can be tossed around too much. But it's very subtle because other jazz artists, this is your debut album, by the way. So
correct.
Usually those are very important for making a statement and making yourself known for recorded music. Like some jazz artists on their debut, like Rajiv Halim, he has like a 10-minute, like 2 10-minute songs on 3 10-minute songs. Wow, on his album, and then you got Twin Talk, where they have very earthy sounds, very highly communicative. Not that other albums aren't, but that one in particular. But then this one, I think the average is about 4 to 5 minutes of songs, and just subtle enough. It's still very artistic, but still very, again, I go back to the word fresh. How it sounds.
I think that was a learning experience in the studio, because all of these songs kind of took a life of their own playing them live. And, when you're playing live, there's a lot of interaction that's happening, and there's a lot more, the songs can go on for, like you said, 10 minutes and people not really notice it because you're kind of in the moment. So we got to the studio and we recorded them, and the songs were kind of lengthy. And I remember talking to the engineer who was recording, Anthony Gravino, and we were just saying, like, a lot of these songs we just kind of want people to nod their heads and enjoy them, but still keep the artistic stuff happening, the interaction, the communication, and everybody's voices kind of being heard. So we just kind of shortened what we would do live for the record to kind of make each version of the song compact and just long enough or just short enough to where you want to hear it more, or you want to push repeat, or you want to come see a live show. So that was something we learned in the studio, that each song could kind of be served better if we kept it a little more brief.
Now, I don't do this with every artist, but I've had a lot of time to live with this album, and it sounds like there's a lot of story behind it. So let's do this track by track. Starting with 94, I'm assuming that's a year?
Yeah, I wrote that. That was one of the first songs I wrote.
It's catchy.
Yeah, it was.
I'm going to say that for like pretty much everything.
Well, that's good. I wrote that. I think I named it 94 because... And I don't want to get too nerdy here, but the first.
Oh, come on. you got to know what you're talking about.
The first 4 chords, if you play them next to each other, for some reason they just made me think of a lot of the R&B I heard on the radio growing up from groups. So the first few chords are E flat major 7, super nerdy. E flat major 7, D7 sharp 9 sharp 5, and G sus 13. We'll just stop there. And I played those back to back, and it just sounded like a lot of the R&B I heard growing up, like groups like Brownstone and In Vogue and Monica's early stuff and Brandy. Yeah. And so I just kind of named it after a year where I heard a lot of that music. So that's awesome. Where the title comes from.
No, for sure. I mean, I was thinking like, you're not 22 years old, because that's my birth year. One Cent. Now this one, where I was really starting to get into this was almost, you don't hear a lot of jazz songs that are inspiring in a sense, but this was inspiring. It made me think of, and I mean this in a good way, like a TV show theme song of a show that I really like, where it's set in Chicago, and you got the opening. You can pitch this to someone later, but like the opening is like a wide shot of the city at night or whatever. Anyway, but at 1 cent, where does that come from?
I started with this little groove in my head, and I sat at the piano, I was playing it over and over again, and it kind of gave me the feeling of, I guess, just kind of being really young, childhood, and being a kid. And that's kind of where the idea for the song started to take shape. And for me, like I was telling you earlier, I was into sports a lot. I was into basketball. That was my sport when I was growing up, and my young life was pretty much encompassed by playing basketball, going to practice, watching basketball videos. So when I was a kid, the person that inspired me the most was Penny Hardaway, who played for the Orlando Magic in the 90s during the heyday of his career. And that feeling of what it felt like to be a kid was kind of the feeling I was trying to invoke with this song. So there's a nice little texture that Stu kind of puts over the groove. He doesn't just play the chords, but he kind of does this little twinkly, sparkly stuff. And I think it kind of gives you that inspirational feeling that you're talking about. And I do kind of hear what you're saying, where it could definitely be the opening of something. It's funny with that song, like a lot of the songs that I almost don't ever bring out to ever play with a group. I'm like, I don't think this one's ready yet. I don't know if this one's, if this one's ready to be played yet. I don't know how I feel about it. I brought it into rehearsal one day, and I remember everybody being like, yeah, this is a good one.
It's a good groove.
Yeah. So that's what kind of what it's about, my childhood and being a kid. And 1 Cent was Penny Hardaway's nickname.
Oh, there you go.
As a basketball player. So
I only know pretty much the Chicago Bulls. Again, growing up in the 90s, I'll be honest, I'm not even that much into basketball, but when you hear like Sirius, the Bulls theme, every kid in the 90s knew that theme.
Did you grow up in Chicagoland?
I grew, yeah.
Okay.
Western suburb, born in the city of the western suburbs.
Okay.
Next 2 songs here, Brown Bear and Burgundy Sunset. This is where the groove really started settling in. You had Stu on, I believe, The Roads. Yeah.
Brown Bear is actually a contrafact of a Count Basie song called Midnight Blue. I changed the chords a little bit, and obviously there's a different groove and everything. And also I heard it was also inspired because I heard this guy named Exile, this producer, DJ, force in the hip hop world. I heard him sample that, and I kind of wanted to take that idea of those two things and run with it and make it my own. So that was a song that wrote itself really quick. Like I remember sitting at the piano and playing the chord progression, which is what I came up first, and the melody kind of just really just oozed out really quickly. And I would record it, make a voice memo, and I remember I brought that one into the group, and that one started as a really, really basic idea and kind of really took a life of its own with the little tag we do at the end. And it's a really fun song to play.
And it gives everyone a chance to be lyrical, really, because especially your solo, and I think Stu's solo again, just very lyrical. I think he was on was it the Moog synthesizer? No.
We said he had a synthesizer, but also he was playing the Rhodes for most of it too. Okay. So there's a couple different sounds going on there. But yeah, and that again, the reason I decided to record this music is I wasn't planning on recording a record.
Oh yeah?
At all, anytime soon. I had just written some music, and I told myself I wanted to, for my own development, I wanted to get out and play it. And the first guys I called to try to play my music, like they were all into it. Which I don't think happens all the time. Musicians are busy. So we started playing the music, and when having the guys that I had playing the group, Dustin Lorenzi on sax, Marcus Evans on drums, Stu on keys, and Christian Dillingham on bass, and there's others on the record too, but that's kind of where the group started. Yeah. They really gave the music life, and I just thought, like, I want to record this, if nothing else, just for me, because musicians leave, they move, and the music sounds the way it does, not because I wrote such great songs, but because of their own individual personalities and musicianship and what they brought to every song.
Such a good timestamp in your musical lifetime.
So yeah, Brown Bear was a really basic idea, but because of who was playing it, it really took on a life of its own. And that's one that I hear a lot of people say they enjoy a lot. So
yeah, for sure.
Burgundy Sunset. When I was a kid, my dad, one of his favorite singers was Al Green. He was big into Al Green and Bill Withers and those type of guys. And I remember it was summertime, and I was like, man, I want to write something that makes me feel the way that Al Green's music makes me feel.
Yeah.
And that's what came out. That one wrote itself really quick. So yeah, Burgundy Sunset was an idea that I find that a lot of the songs that I like the most are the ones that happen real fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, they come out real quick. Or I start an idea and I get like writer's block on the song and I can't finish it, and then like 6 months later something comes to me.
Yeah, don't force it. Don't force the issue.
Yeah, I think it's hard to. I mean, I can write a song, like I can start something and finish it.
Sure.
And it sound, like a finished song. It'll sound
through,
good.
Yeah.
But to really make something that I think leaves an impression, at least on myself,
represents you.
Yeah, it has to kind of happen. It has to kind of unfold.
I'm not on the jazz superiority, blog. That's not fair to everyone else, and that just it's not pretentious. But I do think jazz musicians have a bit of an advantage because they're constantly exploring, constantly really deep into the chords and just what works and what doesn't. Again, not to say that other musics do not, but just on a nightly basis, the career that jazz musicians choose and how they just constantly have to be soloing all the time. Usually they'll come out as composers that can really choose something that represents them, something unique.
Yeah, I think a lot of times, jazz musicians may have a lot more in their arsenal or toolbox to kind of pull from. But I think also with that comes having the ability to have some restraint too. Like sometimes when you have so much in front of you, you really have to take more time to go, what do I really need to make this effective, make this sound good? So it's different sides of the same. I think there's also musicians that have a whole lot less that can write a ton of great songs. So, But yeah, I see what you're saying.
2 a.m. If you don't, again, don't mind me going through.
No, yeah.
These 2 a.m.
2 a.m. Was inspired by one of my favorite musicians, the late great Jay Dilla. He sampled this Minnie Riperton.
Oh yes.
Piece of this Minnie Riperton song.
I haven't heard anyone name drop Minnie Riperton in a long time.
Yeah. So. Inside My Love, and Q-Tip has used it too. So I kind of took that section of the song and in effect, sampled that, and that was the chord structure of the song, wrote a melody over it, and just kind of wanted to take that idea of something really simple, because the part we solo over, or the part where we improvise, is really only 2 bars long. And taking something that short and that simple, it's kind of monk-ish to me, taking something that's really simple and having to start with something really simple to grow that in improvisation as a group. So that was inspired by Jay Dilla, and I guess Thelonious Monk too. Yeah, that's one of my favorites on the record as well.
Friends, actually. So you brought in here artist, spoken word artist, or I think also just vocalist too, Jay Arthur.
Yeah, Jay Arthur is he's a part of this hip hop duo in Chicago called the Whoever's, and they've been around for a while, and I've kind of followed them among others, just as a general fan of music. And I wanted something. I wanted to write originally just kind of like an interlude on the record where it wasn't.
You did that later, I think.
Just where it was just instrumental and something that was just kind of groovy and kind of provided a little bit of contrast to the record. But I wrote it, and I was actually collaborating with them on one of their projects, and I kind of got the ideas. I was hearing his voice on the song, so before a live show, I remember I sent him a demo of it, and he wrote something over, and he loved it, and he performed it with us live once. As soon as I heard his voice on it, I was like, this is we're gonna record this. Yeah. So I was really thankful and honored to have him be a part of the project, and I think that's one of my favorite tracks on the record as well. I wasn't planning on having spoken word on the record, but as soon as I heard him on this song, I really wanted to do it.
I was about to say, it almost came out a little bit of a, after the first 6 songs here, it was like, oh, this came out kind of out of left field. I was like, but it gelled really well. Juan Pastor also on Friends.
Yes.
On the Cajon.
Juan went to school with us. Yep.
Yeah.
He was on the Cajon. Not on the Cajon. He was on the congas.
There you go.
He plays Cajon on a lot of other people's records. But we went to school together at Northern Illinois University, and I was just trying to get as many of my friends and comrades involved as possible, and I was kind of hearing like congas but in the way that I would hear them like on an old like Curtis Mayfield record or something. So I just had him come by and play a little bit of congas. I was really happy to have him be a part of the record too.
I would not have thought Juan Pastor and Curtis Mayfield being in the same set.
Yeah, man. Now,
Lush, this one, first of all, perfect title for the name. But you had Just a Fan Thomas here, another guest artist.
It's funny you say that's a perfect title, because that's one of the tunes where the title came before the actual song. Like I was like, I want to write a song that songs like this. So I wrote the title down on a piece of paper and sat on the piano, and that was the first song I ever wrote once I got out of school, Lush.
Nice.
And I used to play it before I had my own group. I brought it to Justin Thomas's group, Justafan's group, and I brought it in, and he played it, and he liked it so much that he put it on one of his early EPs a while ago. I think maybe 3 years ago, maybe 4. That's why I had to have him come back and play on this song.
For sure.
So
I mean, that's so nice. You said like the reverse kind of composition to it, coming from the title or just from a word.
Yeah.
That's certain. There's a certain bit of magic behind that when artists or anyone can just pull from 4 letters.
It's weird. I've actually that's what's been inspiring me a lot lately. So I've been checking out a lot of poetry.
Yeah.
And sometimes just looking at the titles gives me an idea. Kind of in the same way that, looking at certain types of art can give me an idea for a song. So for whatever reason, that inspires me to write. November, that is a song that's written for whatever reason in the fall, in November, when the leaves start to change and the air starts to change and you're approaching the holiday season. There's just kind of like a warmth that happens there. So I wanted to write a song that kind of made me think of that, and I wrote it around that time.
Yeah. It's pretty. I mean, it sounds like it comes straight out of the songbook, or like it's very straight ahead, which is actually almost a contrast to everything else on this album, which is awesome.
Yeah, actually, because it was so different, because it was such a contrast, I played with the idea of not including it on the record and including it on something else, but I'm glad I did, because I think it kind of rounds things out.
It does.
But it also reminds me of a lot of what I spent a lot of time working on and practicing while I was in school in my undergrad was just trying to learn how to swing. So
I think you I think you figured it out by then.
Well, thank you.
You touched on this earlier, but Afterthought, Interlude, why do you have these tracks on your album? Because a couple more artists also have these 1 minute, not even tracks where it's just a groove and then it fades in and fades out.
Yeah, Afterthought is actually what you hear on the record is just the head or the melody of the song, and I cut out the rest of the song after that, because I remember when I was listening back to all of the songs in succession and trying to figure out like an order and trying to figure out how this can all work together as a body of work, I was just kind of feeling like for this record and how I started to envision it, I didn't want there to be so much interaction and so much improvisation to where the thing I wanted people to remember most was the melodies, and I wanted people to kind of walk away humming the melodies. And I felt like for the record, why not just leave the melody there and let it fade out? And hopefully when people come out and see us play, they'll want to hear more, which is what they'll hear when they come out to a show. So, but I really like that melody. I really like that song, and I wanted to include it. So that's how it became an interlude. But there's a full version of that sitting around somewhere at my place.
Next album.
Yeah.
Here's the second to last song here. I mean, there's the Friends track, but John 16:33, Bible verse. Yeah?
I grew up in the church. My mom and my dad were both. I mean, I was at church all the time. And
Catholic school?
No, not Catholic. I grew up Baptist.
Okay.
Yeah, I grew up Baptist, and that was another plus growing up for me, was hearing that music. From the Black Baptist Church. Really, in a way I didn't realize when I was younger, played a big role in my own development. But anyway, I remember my mom would always be like, "You got to do a religious song and blah blah blah," and I was like, I don't know if I want to do, I don't know if I want to cover anything, So I wanted to write like an interlude going into Pacific Suite.
I was about to say they connect so well.
Yep.
Well, okay, this is essentially one song. I thought this might be Pacific Suite Part 1 under a different name, but but it is an introduction to it, and I don't want to give too much away. I want hopefully people just go read it, but
that Bible verse, John 16:33, is one of the verses that I read that gives me a lot of peace, inner peace, and also relates to kind of how it feels for me when I'm in front of something like the Pacific Ocean. So that was, I think, the last song that I wrote before we recorded the record. It's just started as a piano interlude and went to include other things, but it's just an introduction to the song, and I think it serves it well in that way. So
yeah, I mean, I have it here too, but you know what, I'll hold off on reading it so hopefully other people can.
Yeah, go check it out. Go check it out.
It is inspiring. Okay, this has been bugging me. Pacific Suite Part 2, Calm. Where is Part 1?
Part 1 was written first. Part 1 we used to play. There was a Part 1 and a Part 2, and we used to play them together. And Part 1 was a lot more up-tempo. And Pacific, I took a long trip to California with my wife, and I had never been to California.
Oh, okay.
And we went to San Diego, and she has family out there, and I'd never been to a beach, Pacific Ocean.
Missouri and Chicago all your life,
right?
Pretty much, right?
Pretty much.
It must feel like, because I used to go out to California all the time.
Yeah.
Like a couple weeks every year, visit family there. But that feels like a whole different world.
Yeah,
compared to the Midwest.
It was eye-opening.
Yeah.
Just the landscape, and I remember something about standing next to the ocean, not a lake, not a river, but standing next to the Pacific Ocean, kind of puts into perspective, how, I don't want to say small, but how I guess how small you are.
Sublime.
When you put yourself in a contrast of, you're standing on this ball that's spinning around, it kind of puts things into perspective, and it's kind of peaceful in that way.
Yeah.
I feel like every time I go to a beach or
humbling.
There you go. I exhale for some reason. Just it's really peaceful, and that's actually what one of the meanings of the word Pacific is peace. So I wrote this suite about that, and the second part was the only part I wanted to include on the record, and I liked it a lot. So on the record there's Pacific Suite Part 2, and that part is entitled Calm. And perhaps if anyone ever catches us playing a show, they might hear Part 1 and maybe Part 3, but Part 2 is what I wanted to include on the record.
You're a little teasing on this album. Well, hey, no, it makes sense. People want to then come out, hopefully.
Yeah.
Maybe when you're finished with school, you have more chances to put on your own sets.
Mm-hmm. And I didn't record every song that I had written.
No.
In fact, I didn't include on the record every song that we recorded either. I just was trying to think about how to make this body of work or this album, what worked best for this statement.
But yeah, that's the album Current, been out now for a couple years on the Skip Tone label, and there you go. Where can people find you on social media?
The main thing that I have right now,
working on that website.
The thing that I follow the most is my Instagram. So you can find me on Instagram at Quentin.C_. So that's QUENTIN.C_. And then in my bio on Instagram, there's links to where you can hear my music and stuff like that. If you're not doing anything on September 24th, my group is playing the Hyde Park Jazz Fest on Saturday from 3 to 4 p.m. at the Little Black Pearl. We'd love to see you there. We have some new music, and I'm really, really excited about that performance. So we hope to see you there as well.
Quentin, it's been an honor.
It's been an honor for me, man.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.